Being a DC fan in 2026 has got to be one of the most exhausting things you can put yourself through because if you've been around the block as long as I have, you remember the good times. Like, you remember when DC was releasing banger after banger after banger. And when something underwhelming like Green Lantern or BVS came out, we would just like shit on it constantly. And it's not even like those movies sucked necessarily, it's just that they didn't meet expectations. And DC fans have always had high expectations, and that's because we grew up with things like the DCAU, Young Justice, the Arkham series, these things that met and sort of exceeded our expectations in some ways. And nowadays, you got these performative LARPers who will just tell you that everything DC is putting out now is like peak fiction. And if you don't like it, oh well, then you're part of the problem. Let's take the new Lantern series, for example. Like, the cope that I have been seeing from these, like, I don't even want to call them DC fans, but these LARPers who just pretend to be fans, the cope I'm seeing from them is like actually insane. Because I remember when that first Superman trailer came out, and we had people saying that the Green Lantern suit looked like shit. And then in came like the DC LARPers saying, "Oh, it's supposed to look like shit because the suit is made by Maxwell Lord, so he'll get a better suit by the end of the movie." And then he didn't get a better suit by the end of the movie. And the argument became like, "Oh, okay. Well, when Hal Jordan and John Stewart come in, they're gonna have a good Green Lantern suit." And then guess what? Now we've seen what the Hal Jordan suit looks like, and it's even worse somehow. So now the argument from the DC LARPers has become, "Oh, well, Hal's suit is supposed to look like that because, he's old, so when John gets a suit, it'll look good." Or Hal will get a better costume in the show itself. You just have to wait. You just have to trust the process. Guys, can we just, call it like we see it for a second? Because so far we've gotten two Green Lantern suits in this universe and an infinite amount of excuses for why they look like shit. Like, why are we passing the buck off to the next project indefinitely as for like a lore reason for why it's shit? And I'm not saying these costumes are like the only problems with these movies anyways, but I'm just saying, God forbid you tell any of these DC LARPers that the costume looks bad, because they will just rapidly defend anything that James Gunn is even remotely associated with. And I hate bringing it back to Green Lantern always, but what was one of the biggest critiques of that movie? It was the costume, right?
Please don't make the super suit green or animated.
And DC fans used to be able to take that level of criticism, and more even. DC fans would be the ones criticizing DC projects the most when they did something stupid with the IP. But now all I'm seeing is just blind consumerism ever since James Gunn took over. And I think the reason that is because half the DC fanbase right now is just so desperate for their own MCU, and they're just tired of all the times that failed in the past with DC, that they're willing to just hitch themselves to this wagon, despite the obvious red flags we're getting everywhere. Like, why are we getting movies about Clayface and all these other glup shittos before we're seeing Batman, The Flash, or Wonder Woman? This is not a good slate of projects here, but it seems like modern DC fans don't even care because they just already hitched their wagon to this. But that's only half the fan base. That's like the good side of the delusional fan base. The other half, like as I mentioned earlier, are the LARPers. The ones who are just pretending to be DC fans, like the ones who are only in it for James Gunn's toilet humor and Peacemaker saying the fuck word every 5 seconds. And like I mentioned, these are the same people who will rapidly defend everything James Gunn related and everything related to this universe. They'll tell you that the Green Lantern costume from that new trailer is actually comic accurate because Hal Jordan hangs up his uniform like in one comic from the 1960s, so that actually proves the costume isn't a manifestation of the Power Ring. Despite the fact that we know how the Power Ring works, we know how it's worked for like the last several decades of like comics, TV shows, movies, etc. But that is just one of the arguments that these DC LARPers always do. Like, they'll take comic panels from 50 years ago and try to make an argument for why the changes to the popular canon are actually more comic accurate than the popular canon that we all grew up with. So by that logic, Batman should be using guns, right? And Superman shouldn't be able to fly either. But no, they would never make those arguments because it isn't about comic accuracy to something that happened 70 years ago. It's all about how can we defend James Gunn and all the shitty decisions that he and his crew are making because we are desperate to latch onto a fandom, and I happen to enjoy all the piss and shit jokes that Gunn makes. Let's run a little thought experiment. Like, what if in the next Superman movie, Gunn decided that Superman wasn't going to wear a cape for the entire thing, and all the blue on Superman's costume, like, that's all gone too. I don't think DC fans would appreciate those changes, but the DC LARPers would probably be the first on the scene telling you, well, it's actually comic accurate because in The Return of Superman, he doesn't wear blue or have a cape, and in Superman Red, he also doesn't wear blue or have a cape. So actually, this new shitty decision makes total sense and is totally comic accurate. That is the vibe I'm getting from these guys, honestly. That is the type of arguments that they would make because we've seen how they've reacted to changes to the popular canon, as we mentioned with the Green Lantern trailer.
Have you ever talked with the other Lanterns?
I'm the only human. They're aliens.
One of them's a fucking squirrel.
What did you just say?
I've heard Kugera who was so offended.
Your rings have no power. Your translators are offline.
I'm the only human. They're aliens.
Translators.
Fucking squirrel.
And the way that the costumes look, the way that the power rings work, like this is all part of the history and the lore of the characters. And I mean, take some creative liberties here and there, sure, but when you're missing the point of the characters themselves, I think that's when you, as an alleged DC fan, should be raising an eyebrow and not just blindly accepting everything with the DC logo on it. Now I want to talk about Iron Man 2, and I know this might seem like a bit of a left field turn, but bear with me here. So Iron Man 2, it's a pretty good movie, okay? It's not as good as the first movie, but it's still pretty fun, it's still pretty enjoyable. Whenever it's on TV, I always like sit down and watch some of it. Good movie. Okay. MCU fans hate this movie. Like, to this day, it is ranked as one of the bottom tier MCU movies, like sometimes even below Thor 4 or like Quantumania or something like that. But rewatch Iron Man 2, honestly, it's not even that bad. So why does this movie in particular get so much hate? Well, it's because Iron Man 2 came out, I think, in 2010, right? It was during a time when the MCU fans and the Marvel fans were one and the same. So simply by being like an underwhelming movie, not as good as the first one, Iron Man 2 sort of was in this position where it was like, it was okay to shit on Iron Man 2. But once the MCU really exploded and became this like pop culture icon, now the normies were getting attached to it. Then all of a sudden you have people defending these lesser movies like The Eternals or Loki or She-Hulk or whatever. And this is despite the fact that all of those are way worse than Iron Man 2. And the reason I'm bringing this up, if you haven't figured it out already, is because the exact same thing is happening to DC right now. You can feel free to shit on Green Lantern 2011 or BVS, because the fandom hated those back when it was popular to hate on those things. And that has sort of become cemented in the identity of being a DC fan, that those movies are bad and that you should shit on them. But now we're just getting way lower quality in our DC movies, TV shows, etc. But the rabid fan base is like running defense for these projects, which look worse than the things that they openly criticized 10 years ago. But they're like desperate for DC to return to form, and it's sort of like they'll accept any 10-year plan as gospel.
You know what I noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying.
And make no mistake, I'm not defending Green Lantern 2011, I'm not defending the Snyderverse either, I'm just saying that for as bad as those things were, they are better than what we're getting now. So DC fans, if this is truly what you wanted, then you can have it for the next 5 years before James Gunn quits or gets fired. But when the dust settles and when all the popular opinion swings the other way, just don't pretend that you were always against James Gunn's plan the same way the DC fans of old pretended that they were always against Snyder. Because I was here in 2017, I was making YouTube videos, and one video in particular talking about how bad the Snyderverse was, I remember I got totally flamed for it in 2017. Not by the Snyder Bros, by the mainstream DC fans. Now look at us. Hating on the Snyderverse has sort of become the popular opinion, and here we are again with Zack Snyder 2.0. I have played these games before, and I know that in 10 years' time, everyone who might disagree with me on Gunn, they'll either silently come around to my way of thinking, or they'll be retweeting hashtag restore the Gunverse to their 20 followers.
See, I'm not a monster. I'm just ahead of the curve.